So you're on?
I'm on Greg, yes.
Okay. Could you please state your name and your position in relevance to forestry?
My name is Greg Adams, and I've been involved in industrial forest management for over 30 years in the Acadian Forest region.
Can you tell us a little about your work in regards to plantations, replantations?
I've been involved in all stages of plantation management through producing trees, through trying to get a much better handle on site requirements. How do you make the best choices for areas where trees are going to be planted? So what species or mixture of species is most appropriate for a given forest condition? And then I've been involved in all stages through aftercare of those plantations, tending, been involved with work regarding things like commercial thinning, understanding growth and yield. So really a broad range of topics related to planted trees.
Can you tell us a little bit about how this work relates to the creation of sustainable woodlots?
Well, establishing plantations is one component, obviously, of an overall forest management program. It's important from the standpoint of sustainability. You have to go back to the really the three pillars: environmental, social, and economic. And more and more, there's better understanding that some parts of the landscape should be left alone. Some parts should be managed to create all different sorts of habitat. It's important that people understand that you need a whole range of forest conditions across the landscape, and that includes age classes from very young through to very old. And really, plantations, establishment of plantations and planted forests is one of the tools that you can use to everything from the economic side and sustainable wood supply right through to restoration activities.
Why do you believe the forest is important?
Well, in a region like ours, we've been blessed with a good climate for a range of different species that grow here, and our environment is largely forested. If you fly out over top of New Brunswick or Nova Scotia, you see forest everywhere. It's an important part of our environment. Also, it's a source of sustainable resources, and a lot of the history of our whole region has been built on forest products. In New Brunswick, the province of New Brunswick is the most forest-dependent province for GDP in the entire country, and it isn't as large a percentage of GDP provinces like Nova Scotia, but it's still an important part. And really importantly, it's very helpful related to local economies. So that's an important aspect. And so you manage forest sustainably. It produces products that we can export and contribute to our lifestyles here. And so from that standpoint, it's very important.
What do you believe is the biggest problem in New Brunswick forestry today?
I don't know about calling it a problem. I would call it more like challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the challenges are related to you know, we don't have high population density in this region, nor in the rest of Canada. Most of our goods are shipped out of the province, and it's truly a global marketplace. So you know, we're very fortunately situated, very close to large population centers down the eastern seaboard. That's a good thing. But at the same time, you're in a global market, and if all our wood was taken off the market tomorrow, it would just get replaced from someplace else. So that really emphasizes the need to be competitive, and at the same time look after all the various things that are important from the forest. So looking after the environment, looking after the water, making sure that you have a plan related to biodiversity, so looking at all the different parts of ecosystems. It's a very difficult management challenge, and it's so that's important. And then on top of that, if you overlay forces that are coming down the road, climate change, we hear about that all the time. You need to be paying attention to that. At the same time, the climate today is what it is. So trying to make yourself resilient to changing climates is another challenge. Right now, there's a lot of preoccupation with respect to what's going on just north of New Brunswick in Quebec. The spruce budworm is one of the biggest ecological drivers in the forests in this region. It's the largest single forest eating pest in the country, and right now there's an area the size of approximately half all the crown land in New Brunswick that's in severe or moderate defoliation just north of us in Quebec. So it's part of our natural ecology, and you know, people have tracked budworm epidemics for basically hundreds of years, and when people want to use that resource, then clearly there's a conflict, and you know, so working towards making your forest as resilient as possible, making the right value decisions when it comes to dealing with epidemics, that sort of thing, that's another challenge. So there's, I've said a lot of challenges there.
So you kind of already touched on this, but in regards to some of the challenges, do you have any solutions to some of these challenges that you can come up with?
Well,
Or
there isn't any magic bullets, but in terms of solutions, in terms of ways to help us, there's all kinds of things that we can do. And some of that is just tried and true, good forest management, but increasingly there's all kinds of new technology, and particularly from the standpoint of resource assessment, modeling, computer modeling, understanding how forest dynamics are going to play out under different levels of disturbance or whatever have you. That's very, very important to use those tools very thoughtfully, and then determine how that needs to factor into your long-term objectives, and what tactics are you going to use going forward. What is your sustainable wood supply? All of those things all smushed together.
Yeah. In your opinion, how does New Brunswick compare to other provinces in improving forestry practices?
Well, the one thing New Brunswick has had, it's had a very long vision with respect to understanding forest dynamics, how you model forests growing forward, and that can factor directly into the decision making and how governments set goals and set objectives, targets, things like that. So New Brunswick has very good history there, and it holds us in good stead. You know, there's recognitions of all the various habitat types that are required for different suites of organisms, and so I think that's one of the stronger things. And the other thing is certainly New Brunswick's had a long-term commitment to forest management, and that's shown up over numbers of decades. So you really need that continuity of commitment.
Oh, Pat, you're crazy. The kitty came from Tony Verhoopen's farm. More about it from one day.
If you could offer one piece of advice to those with decision-making power, what would you offer to change or improve the practices going on in New Brunswick?
Well, to me, the very biggest thing is to make sure and understand very clearly the impacts of current management in terms of looking out in the long term, and really understanding how different ideas will play out in the forest, and how they'll impact everything from biodiversity through to the ability to produce competitive products for our economy. How you ensure thriving local communities, rural communities in particular. So you really need to do that very careful level of modeling to understand these things. So take the best forest science you can, and use the best forecasting tools you can to really understand what the long-term impacts are of the decisions that you make.
All right, thank you. That's about it. That's what I need, then.